I'm going to look at something from a slightly different angle here, and I've got 25 minutes, I think. Okay, and I'll do my damnedest not to overrun. But hopefully this is going to be just a little bit of food for thought for you, at looking at things from a slightly different perspective. And so, this is what I'm looking to cover. We look about the global war for the best talent. I haven't said the global war for talent. You don't want any old talent. You want better talent than all of the people sitting on your table and those that are sitting on every other table. True? Because without better people than they've got, your business is yesterday's news. And although I think in a resourcing or an in-house recruiting or an HR role, and I've been an HR person actually in my time, I count myself as a recruiter. It's a bit like an Alcoholics Anonymous thing here, isn't it? I'm a recruiter. But, you know, having done that as well, I think that often I wasn't, and I would perhaps put to you that it's not always brought to you what the corporate objectives are and how to recruit the people that best fit what the corporate strategy is, I suppose, and how you are going to get to that. So it's not just the global war for talent. There's a lot of talent out there. They may not be the talent that you're looking for. Do we really need creative types? Well, pretty obviously, from the title of my session, I'm going to try and persuade you that actually you do. Because without them, however them being a bit of a pain in the bum to manage, without them, your business has no future. How on earth do you get them in the first place? Sounds like a great idea. We'll have some of those. They're the ones in the weird clothes that don't do the CVs properly. How are we going to find them? And then I'm going to summarise because it's a brief session and we need to move on. So, introduction. I'm not going to do any sell on APSCo at all. I'll tell you who I am. I've had over 30 years in recruitment, a little stint in an HR role in 2 different software companies before coming back to run the Association of Professional Staffing Companies. Originally, we were involved in recruiting or having members that recruited in the technical arena, and it was founded in 1999. I was headhunted to take that job. I said I'd do it for a year, get a proper job afterwards, and haven't had time ever since. And APSCo changed to be APSCo, the Association of Professional Staffing Companies, on January 2009. I hope it's all right, I'm going to take my jacket off. It's really hot in here, isn't it? Okay. Maybe I'm just a funny age, I don't know, but maybe both. But bear with me, I'll take my jacket off. It was created in January 2009 to actually bring together the professional staffing market. So different from the agricultural side, the industrial side, that kind of recruiting by numbers in bulk, as it were, that was very well covered by Kevin, you met earlier on today from the REC. But the professional side of the recruitment market, so those recruitment companies that provide at the top of the IT tree, whether it be executive search, interim managers, accountants, banking professionals, whatever else, HR professionals, whatever else it may be. And the view is that that's a very separate marketplace. So I want to pay peanuts, don't mind if I get lots of monkeys, is one side of a market, but actually if you want very good service and you take 1 or 2, it's a different ballgame. We want to separate them out. We have over 600 individual company members, 20 references to get in, yada, yada. I'm not going to tell you anything else. We have an international reach, and I'll tell you why. That market is a global market. It really is a global market. So APSCo are the only trade body in the recruitment market representing recruitment organisations. And we don't say agencies, by the way. That's a different ballgame. That's at the lower end. So we say recruitment organisations that are global. If you are a niche player, and all of our members are niche players, your expansion is by setting up another niche. You might be in banking and then you go into IT, and or you open an office somewhere else and service those requirements. So a huge percentage of our memberships, over 80% of our members, actually service end user customers further afield. We have offices in Singapore. I'm off there there on Monday, and Hong Kong, we have a set up there as well. And I joke about my global domination plan, but frankly, watch that space. So APSCo is an internationally driven trade body for that senior level in the recruitment marketplace. And so talking about a global war for talent, I think makes some perfect level of sense. Oh, that was a new build, by the way. Love it. Okay, I've put some cartoons in here because I want really for you to think about whether any of this matches you. And I don't know if you can read it, or 6 suppliers are complaining that you're not taking this selection process seriously. I tell you something, recruitment people sometimes feel that with end user customers, okay? May not be the case, but sometimes they do. Okay, so global war for the best talent. It's a big issue out there. I know McKinsey's coined the phrase the global war for talent a long time ago, and we've had a period of time recently, last 5 years, I suppose, where it doesn't feel like we've had a problem getting the numbers of people in. And in fact, sometimes we felt we've had too many numbers, but it can feel that you can't get the perfect person. And I think pretty obviously that's changing at the minute with regard to getting the numbers, but I guarantee you it will still feel as though you can't get the absolute best talent that is out there and specific for you. Because that talent's geographically mobile, and what that means now is, actually I never do school pick up and drop offs. I've got loads of kids, but lucky enough I've got a husband who works more flexibly than I do, loads, and I mean loads. But we found out only yesterday that one of the teachers whom we know, because most of our kids have gone to the same school, in fact all of them, has gone to be a teacher in a private school in Dubai. Well, teachers didn't used to do that, but boy oh boy they're doing it now, and why wouldn't they for 2 years? Beyond that probably wouldn't survive. Scratch the surface in Dubai and there's more surface underneath. But the reality is, whatever level of decent people there are, they have choices and they will move. So when you pick them once, you're going to have to pick them again in 18 months because somebody else will snatch them for you. And that talent is more demanding than ever before. I know there was a presentation earlier on about looking what millennials want and all of that kind of stuff. I've only just got to terms with the kind of over 50-year-olds, but the reality is that talent is more demanding and they're asking for different things. And I won't go into the details because you know. And that means we need to recognise what they want in order to attract them against all of the competitors that you have in this room. The experienced talent pool is shrinking. I know there's been all the talk about it getting older, and I think that's a very interesting thing, actually. And I think I spoke last week at a recruitment-oriented event here, and I talked about actually perhaps setting up Saga recruitment in order to attract very specifically more mature candidates. Maybe I'm just sort of putting myself in the frame for later on, really, but to attract more senior people. But the reality is, people with 3 and 5 years experience, right, getting them with 30 years experience, 3 and 5 years experience, nobody was training them in a recession, which means they're not there and available for you. And I think that a lot of the people that we are all recruiting for want a set type of person. They have in mind the graduate with a 2-1 and a decent suit can, you know, stand up and do a decent presentation, sell themselves at an interview or whatever. The number of those people around, and obviously it must broaden from that, which is no bad thing that it will do, but the reality is there are fewer of those than ever before because your companies didn't train them, and it means they're not there for somebody else to take. And the graduate pool is undoubtedly less skilled. And as I said, I have loads of kids and a lot of them are at university. I don't know if I like to think it was tougher in my day. We all think a bit of that, don't we? Oh, it was much tougher to get a 2-1 in my blooming day. But the reality is, when you get these graduates coming out, they don't seem to be skilled at the level that we think they should be skilled. Whether it's writing decent English, whether it's having basic numeracy, there seems to be a different level. And that's about sending more of a percentage of population to university, but it doesn't help us when we want graduates with 2 years experience who can actually write a decent report as well. And that's a problem for us. And the universities aren't listening. It takes on average 4 to 5 years to write the most appropriate undergraduate course for a degree subject, by which time everyone's graduated because it only lasted 3 years. And of course, the environment that you want those skill sets to come out has completely changed. They're less loyal. They move. They tell you they're joining, and actually they don't. And it isn't the money that someone else has offered them that will make the difference. It's the fact that they can go home early on a Friday afternoon. Or they can have free internet access anywhere, whatever, and you give them an iPad or whatever. But the reality is they are less loyal, and that makes your role and the role of recruitment consultants who might be working and feeding people into you more frustrating than ever before. And your competitors are getting smarter because they're coming to events to look specifically. And all of a sudden the role of in-house recruiter has actually started to change. And I think this is too late, really, but it started to change into a real profession in its own right. And it should have done that 5 years ago, but it didn't. But it is starting to change, and people are more inventive about getting people, and that makes life more difficult. I put to you this. You've had loads of technology presentations today. I hear Google Dave was great. I haven't met him yet, but I can't wait. But the reality is, that I think what most of us have been doing in the past 5 or 6 years is automating recruitment processes to make our lives easier. And the way that we've wanted to make our lives easier, and I looked at a website of some software company, I'm not even going to say who it is, because actually it's embarrassing for them, I doubt whether they're here, who have recruitment-oriented software, and what they say that it does is, actually should I read it? No, it's not here, it's okay. What they say is they make your recruitment process more efficient, quicker, and cheaper. And I think that's what automating the recruitment processes have done. But what's interesting is, nowhere in that sales pitch, which is all over their website, is about helping you get the best people. Now, you can have thousands of cheaper, efficient, and people that got there quicker in your business, and you will still have no business tomorrow. You'll just have one full of a lot of people that is expensive to make redundant, actually. So let's be careful about automating that. So 65% of organisations indicate their talent acquisition system is either fully or partially automated. And actually there's allocated to be about a 2% decrease year over year in cost per hire. I think that's bugger all. Some companies are showing more than that. But the reality is the automated process can cut your spend, but at what cost? And let me tell you something else, even if it's 15% or 50%, at what cost to the business? Now, I'm a recruitment consultant. I would say that, wouldn't I? Okay, but I just want you to be able to think about this too. Okay, the top 5 tools make sense: screening tools, applicant tracking systems, all that kind of stuff. Pre-hire assessment tools, relationship management. Relationship management, what on earth are we talking about there? That's lack of management, realistically. Man is a word in management. You think it would have some real involvement, and pretty obviously the use of social networks and mobile technology. And funnily enough, I'm not trying to knock those. It's the automation of the process that is the most worrying thing if you want the best talent. Okay, it's not about where you find them, because that needs to become more inventive, and we need to get more places out there. And my table, we're going to talk about that in a second, actually, with me. But actually, you need to make sure that in automating your processes as much as you could. Who here have automated their processes as much as they could do in the last 5 years? Oh, come on, own up. Okay, because we wanted to be quicker, more efficient, and cheaper. That was the drive to us, to be that. And the recruitment market itself has done a lot of that too, because we felt that's what you wanted of us. So, haven't you heard there are no winners anymore? We only hire also-rans. There used to be a thing that you never got sacked by choosing IBM, actually. And there was a joke, they were all in navy blue suits and sang the same song. And then, funnily enough, IBM lost out the plot with regard to PCs. They didn't think they'd catch on. And they didn't think software would be a big deal. And if you're not careful, your business could be in the same boat. I think sourcing isn't just about Boolean logic. It just isn't, actually. It can't be replaced fully by software. It can't. It needs people involved, making decisions, making contacts. It can be contact by email, but there needs to be a real person at one end, because actually there's a real person at the other end. I think it's undervalued in proportion to corporate impact that it has. Because nobody's going to notice when you get given unrealistic job specifications and you get bums on seats. I hate that phrase, bums on seats. You get your numbers efficiently and effectively and at the right price, but actually the corporate objective will be around innovating and moving things forward. And will those people necessarily be able to do that? Will they match the unrealistic job specifications that you get given? I think that few in-house resources have the necessary premium tools. There hasn't been enough spend. If it's all about giving you rubbish tools, what can anyone expect back? The idea is that you're going to be cheaper than doing it any other way. So no one's going to invest in loads of money to make sure you get the right stuff. And I think it's still wrongly perceived as a relatively junior role. There needs to be a change. A change in title would help. The nomenclature of it really doesn't help it, but actually a change in the understanding. And actually I could have been saying this to an HR audience 10, 15 years ago. All right? And actually HR have lost an awful lot of power. It could have been said directly to HR people. It's not seen, when it was personnel, it wasn't seen as the real value added function that actually it is within an organisation and needs to have the level of kudos to do that too. And I think when you bring on RPOs and MSPs as intermediaries, you put yourself a step further away from actually understanding what your company needs and making sure the communication goes across. So there you go. And what do I mean about creative types? Do we really care whether we have creatives at all? After all, they tend to be more difficult to manage. And when I talk about creative types, I am not talking about people in your marketing department necessarily. I'm talking about accountants, although you don't want them too creative. But accountants, lawyers, managers, office cleaners, some of the most creative ideas that have spun the most amounts of money have come from some of the most junior people within organisations. There's a lovely one with the invention of the bullet train in Japan, where there was all sorts of problems, as you can imagine, being a pretty mountainous country, of going through rock with this bullet train. It was going to be the big thing, it's become a relatively big thing. And in actually going through some of these mountains of sheer rock, they had a water seepage problem, which you can imagine, of water coming down from the top of the mountain and going and filling up the tunnels. And actually there was a view they should have gullies, all the engineers got together, the big guns got together to discuss gullies to get the water away, which makes perfect sense. It was one of the guys with the drill who spent his life going like that, not necessarily good for brain work actually, who said, the water is actually spa water if you think about it from the top of this mountain. Why don't we bottle it and sell it rather than just sending it away? The bottled water created from that, which has a name unfortunately I can't remember or pronounce, actually has more income than the bullet train. Okay? It's not the only example, but in 25 minutes I can't give you any more. But the reality is you need creative types. Okay, creativity and innovation are the number one strategic priorities for corporations over the world. Creativity, part of our day jobs. These are all the things talking about creativity. Profitability rests on individual creativity. Creative teams perform better and they get better results with regard to that. I'm speaking at double quick time, you can tell. More profitable. The more creative an organisation, the more profitable. You can see that from the obvious ones these days, but it's always been the case. What about this? The IBM Global study, they looked at 1,500 CEOs across the world a couple of years ago. And what they found was more than rigour, management discipline, integrity, or even vision, successfully navigating an increasing complex world will require creativity. It's interesting that I quoted IBM in a slightly different scenario earlier on. Successful economies and societies need to be creative. And yet, when we automate a recruitment process, aren't we cutting out people with a slightly off-centre career background? Extrapolation is one thing, but picking the pennant winners is something entirely different. So, what do I mean by creativity? And what do I mean by innovation? Because you can have creativity and then the next stage within an organisation is about innovating and coming up with different ideas. So the capacity to develop ideas, okay, and the application of that creativity is what I suggest to you that you need to look for with every single hire that you make. And actually, there's been a view that the rise of the power of the East with regard to global dominance from an economic point of view has one potential problem that may hold it back. And it's the lack of actual culture, the culture in most of these Eastern countries, to actually enhance and demand and push forward creativity, interestingly. And we're not that great at it in the UK either. Anyone who's got strange ideas, doesn't wear the school uniform in exactly the right way, is seen as a pain in the bum. And we're not talking about people in the art department, we're talking about everybody else. We see art as a school subject as something that's a bit numpty, rather than seeing that people that if they have a GCSE or an A-level in art, that actually it suggests they might want to do something a bit extra when they're an accountant, rather than seeing as a soft subject that we don't really count. And that's creating us a problem. And there are some countries that don't have that problem and they'll be ahead of the game. So why is it that if we're not careful, we can struggle with engaging with creative types? I think the heavily automated recruitment process is really part of it. I think we have outmoded selection techniques if we're not careful. We have application forms which put someone in a straitjacket, and if they can't be bothered to do a bit because they're one of those people that pushes the boundaries, heaven forbid they get through to the next stage. Heaven forbid. An overemphasis on competency-based models and frameworks. Look, we all like a bit of competency-based selection. It makes us feel good, makes us feel vaguely scientific. But the reality is, what it can do is for us to structure so heavily on the type of person we want, for whichever role, that we miss out on the slight wild cards. I'm not saying you need 100% wild cards, but actually you need some. And if we're not careful, I think companies that we're recruiting for, or indeed if we want to keep them once they're there, struggle with doing that. Let me start by saying I wish I had your imagination. I've read some CVs of people like that, I have to say. How do we recognise someone who's a bit creative and innovative? Well, I think these are pretty obvious, and it's about how you pick that. So I'm not going to go by them one to one, but I've got 10. But these are some of the things, and maybe that we have creativity as a competency within every role that we're looking to recruit, and it will change the way that we go about recruiting them, actually, I think. I like number 10. They know that a good story can change the world. I haven't interviewed many people lately that are like that. I don't know about you. I haven't seen it on any CVs lately, because how would I? I certainly haven't seen it on any application forms. So, what do we need to do differently to find some of them? And again, we're going to talk more about this. I think we need to plan what we're doing with regard to that. I think we need to create flexibility within the framework to go out there and make space for people that don't fit an exact mould. I think we need to really recognise the importance of creativity within a department, because according to the surveys that IBM have done, your CEO recognises it. Maybe they just haven't filtered that through to every level within the business. But it's about recognising it. It's about being ready to manage people that are slightly different and offbeat. We can look for them. There's some areas of where we can find them in a sec. Not everyone's looking, but everyone's a candidate. And I think that in going on to, and create and engage with the little communities that we all know we're supposed to be doing and all of that, we go to the ones that have the job title similar to the people that we want. When actually maybe we need to go to completely different communities and look for people that got a bit of spark. And that's about spreading things slightly differently. And I think we need to pick the really good ones very early on and not be afraid to say, we need you in our business. We don't need you yet, but in 3 years' time, I want you. And I am going to want you enough to make sure that we have a role that's specifically oriented around you and your skill sets. And that's brave for us to do it, but we can do it. I think historically we haven't done it as much as we might do because we think that means they're going to double their salary when they come. But it doesn't need to. Because actually the thing with creative types is they tend not to fit into the normal of actually wanting the swishy car or the this, that and the other. They're less orientated with all of that kind of stuff, but it would be something different that might not fit in the recruitment norms or actually the office standard hours or whatever else it may be that you need to be a bit more flexible on. Well, I'm whizzing through quickly, Alan, you impressed? So, I knew it overran so heavily this morning, I was determined not to. I think we also need to look for them in completely unlikely places, and that's around events that aren't job fairs. That's around going to different things, and it might be going to art shows. It might be things that you never thought about because you don't want an artist, you want somebody who's an accountant, but maybe it's the accountant who does a bit of art in in their spare time or whatever else it may be. But it's going to different events for people with something a bit different. And These people are hard to find, but that's okay because they're not responding to your ads now anyway. And it means they're not responding to anyone else's. And you may not find them very easily because they may not be in a corporate environment at this moment in time, which means they're probably not on LinkedIn, even if they're a bit too old to be on Facebook. Oh, I don't know how I even said that, but you know what I mean. So the reality is they're out there, but they're in different places, I put to you. I think you do need that pipeline. I'm sure everyone will have mentioned it. I don't know. I haven't seen the slides from earlier on, but I'm sure everyone's talked about a pipeline and engagement and keeping the communities and all of that kind of stuff. We know that. But I think we go to the most obvious communities and we engage with them when we can be bothered and when we're not busy being dragged away to do things that actually gets our numbers up and therefore our success ratios. But the reality, this is engaging at a different level with different communities than maybe we've done before. You know how important employment brand is to your success, but that's about joining up recruitment processes and branding processes and actually engagement processes and then ultimately management processes within your business. And you need a say on all of that. It's no good you just getting people when the marketing department gives you a good corporate brand, you communicate it second hand, you get good people in, the actual engagement of them when the onboarding process is a bit rubbish or they had a bad candidate experience through the process or whatever else it may be, or that when they're managed and they're a bit creative, they get slapped down at every time they come up with a new idea. Or the politics within the business or the team that they're going to go into does not allow them to step outside of what is the cultural norm. So it may mean that you, in order to make the level of difference, need to go and start talking internally about big fundamental change. Because otherwise, they won't stay. But I think that makes your role even more interesting. If you can have a say, because you need that say to do your job properly, if you have a say on the future of the culture of the business that you're in. It would work for me, I don't know about you. And actually, internal mobility programs are going to be the big key things, taking people out of one thing. We've been very lazy, I think, corporate UK PLC, about keeping people in a stream because that's a skill set they had at that time, rather than moving around. So whether someone's an HR person or in the accounting department, whatever it may be, right stuff is right stuff. I think right stuff used to mean somebody who said yes and worked long hours. But I think right stuff nowadays is somebody in a pair of jeans who comes up with the best ideas and can sell those ideas internally. And some of those ideas would be rubbish, but others might be the ones in the future. I think we all need to rethink technology options to create a positive candidate experience that is not simply around cutting out too many candidates that don't comply with exactly what's there written on the sheet in front of us. Because I really think the investment's been mainly on that in the last 5 years, and you are lumbered with those systems now. And you can't afford to lose the really good ones. You really can't. So, in summary, I think the sheer volume of potential candidates combined with that drive for cost and efficiency savings has simply driven automation as the mainstay of the process moving forward. I think the emphasis on right fit is a problem within companies, and what it can do is lead to your being pushed to recruit the same old, all of the time. The look and feel of our company, they fit into the culture. Don't you want somebody that takes the culture further forward? It can be dangerous. These people can be dangerous. It's okay. And against a backdrop of uncertainty and all the economic stuff that's gone on, there is a new picture that's emerging for skills and the traits of real business success. And all of the research has shown that creativity is seen as the number one trait necessary to take a business forward. I think if you want creative capital, whose ideas can be turned into innovative products and stuff, then you need to make some changes. And it might be about branding. Might be about the strategy and the management culture may need to change of your business in order to attract them to you and keep them in that business for as long as you can. And I put this to you. You've been here all day, or perhaps you came this afternoon. How confident do you feel that the next Steve Jobs isn't receiving, at this moment in time, an automated no thanks? Computer says no to you at this moment in time. How comfortable do you feel about that? Thank you.